Divine Feminine, only 24 hours remain before the January 11th portal opens, and already the energy is shifting around you. If these final hours feel quieter than you expected, yet heavy with significance and meaning, it is not because nothing is happening. It is because something within you has quietly completed. What you are feeling now is not emptiness, it is an emotional resolution. This portal is a spiritual activation point, a threshold where old emotional cycles end and only true presence remains. And in the twin flame journey, the 111 portal often marks the moment when waiting finally dissolves. This feeling of being emotionally done did not arrive overnight. It has been forming quietly beneath all the hope, patience, and repeated understanding you have offered for so long. The 111th portal simply amplifies what has already been true. It brings truth into sharp focus. And when genuine presence is absent, the soul stops negotiating. You are not colder. You are clearer. For so long, you carried the emotional continuity of this connection. You held space through endless silence. You kept the bond alive across distance. You interpreted mixed signals and turned them into meaning. You did all this because your heart was open. But the energy of the 111 portal does not support emotional maintenance without reciprocity. It exposes what is real by dissolving distraction and illusion. This is why your energy feels different now, in these final hours. You are not reaching out in the same way. You are not hoping in the same way. You are not waiting in the same way. Not because love has disappeared, but because your nervous system has stopped believing in potential without presence. Divine Feminine, the 111 portal carries an energetic demand for authenticity. It is a moment where connection either exists in truth, or reveals its absence. And if the masculine remains emotionally distant as this gateway opens, the feminine does not collapse into sadness anymore. She becomes still, and stillness is the sign that her days of emotional labor have ended. This feeling of being done is not anger. It is not grief. It is acceptance settling into your body. You may notice that you are no longer checking for messages the way you used to. No longer interpreting silence as a sign of divine timing. No longer making excuses for why the connection feels one-sided. The emotional loops that once kept you engaged simply stop running. Not because you force yourself to stop them, but because they no longer make sense to your system. The 111th portal is a cosmic alignment point. It quietly asks you what you will carry forward and what you are ready to leave behind. Clarity rises to answer. Patterns that once rooted you in fear or kept you overextending are now illuminated, inviting you to release them. This clarity prepares you for the shifts ahead. Though it isn't a holiday, the energy of 111 brings you back to what truly matters: presence, truth, genuine connection. And when this energy highlights what has been missing in the twin flame dynamic, the feminine does not fight reality anymore. She aligns with it. This is why the completion you feel is calm instead of dramatic. The heart is no longer arguing with the truth. Divine Feminine, being emotionally done does not mean you are closing your heart. It means you are closing the chapter that required you to stay emotionally available without being met. You are no longer sustaining the connection through hope alone. You are allowing it to exist only where there is real presence. This is the moment where the energetic contract changes. The masculine may feel this shift as distance, but it is not distance. It is neutrality. The feminine is no longer leaning forward. She is no longer compensating. She is simply standing where she is, sovereign in her own space. And from that place, only what is aligned can reach her. The 111 portal is not ending your twin flame journey. It is clarifying it. If union is meant to move forward, it will do so now, without emotional chasing, without waiting, without you holding the connection together alone. And if it does not, the release will not feel like loss. It will feel like relief. Divine Feminine, this emotional completion is not something to resist. It is a sign that your being has chosen peace over perseverance. You are no longer investing energy into what requires you to remain unfinished. The 111 portal did not make you emotionally done, it revealed that you already were. And when the Divine Feminine reaches this point, the journey cannot continue in the same way. Something must respond now. Something must resolve. Not through force, not through effort, but through truth. Divine Feminine, the 111 portal carries a frequency that does not allow emotional illusion to survive. It is a time when presence becomes undeniable and absence becomes impossible to justify. This is why, in the twin flame journey, the 111 portal often heralds emotional completion rather than ongoing longing. At earlier stages, you were able to endure uncertainty. You could wait through silence. You could reinterpret distance as divine timing. You could carry hope even when reality offered little evidence. But this portal does not support that kind of emotional translation. It strips the connection down to what is actually being lived, not what is being imagined. This is why something shifts inside you as the portal opens. The 111 energy brings your body into the present moment. It highlights who is here and who is not, who shows up emotionally and who remains distant. And when you reach the final stages of this journey, your nervous system can no longer ignore what this energy reveals. This is not sadness returning. It is illusion leaving. For a long time, emotional endurance felt meaningful. You believed that patience was love, that waiting was devotion, that holding space would eventually create alignment. But the energy of this portal is one of embodiment. It asks not what you feel, but what you are experiencing in real time. And when your real experience no longer matches your hope, your system quietly recalibrates. Divine Feminine, emotional completion happens when your heart no longer argues with reality. You stop explaining away his behavior. You stop softening the truth to protect the connection. You stop postponing your own peace for a future that remains undefined. The 111 portal accelerates this process, because it removes the usual distractions. There is less outer movement, less noise, less momentum carrying you forward on autopilot. And in that stillness, truth becomes loud. You may notice that you are not grieving in the same way. You are not aching. You are not spiraling. Instead, there is a calm recognition that something has ended internally. Not love, but effort. Not care, but emotional labor. That is why the feeling is quiet rather than dramatic. The Divine Feminine does not become emotionally done because she gave up. She becomes emotionally done because her system has finished processing the lesson of waiting, the lesson of hoping, the lesson of carrying a connection without reciprocity. The 111 portal reveals whether your connection exists in presence, or only in memory. And when you see clearly that real presence has been missing, you do not fight it anymore. You simply align with what is. This is also why the masculine may sense an energetic distance at this time. Not because the feminine withdrew to punish him, but because she stopped leaning forward. She stopped maintaining the emotional continuity all by herself. The connection is now allowed to exist only where there is mutual presence. Divine Feminine, this completion is not rejection. It is resolution. It is the moment when your nervous system no longer braces for disappointment. It no longer waits for contact that may never come. It no longer keeps you open to uncertainty. You are not closing your heart. You are closing the loop. The 111 portal asks a simple question that cannot be avoided. Is this connection being lived, or is it being imagined? And when that question is answered honestly, your body responds with calm instead of longing. This is why the energy of this portal can feel so final. Not because something outside of you abruptly ended, but because something inside of you did. Once this internal ending takes place, the journey cannot continue on hope alone. Something must reorganize. Something must become real. And from this point forward, only presence can move the journey. Divine Feminine, there comes a moment in the twin flame journey when presence stops being something you hope for and becomes something you require. Not as an ultimatum, not as a demand on the other person, but as a natural consequence of your own growth and emotional maturity. That moment often arrives with the 111th portal, because the energy of this gateway will not tolerate emotional absence masquerading as connection. For a long time, you accepted fragments. A message here, a memory there, an occasional moment of emotional openness followed by long stretches of distance. You learn how to stay emotionally available without being fully met, and you called this love. But the 111 portal does not operate in fragments. It highlights togetherness, embodiment, real-time connection. And when those elements are missing, the illusion collapses. This is when presence becomes non-negotiable. Not because you hardened, but because you stabilized. Divine Feminine, true presence means more than just communication. It means emotional availability. It means consistency. It means the willingness to be seen, and to see the other in truth. In earlier stages, you were able to compensate for the lack of these things. You filled in the gaps with understanding. You held the emotional thread even when he let it slip from his hands. But your being cannot do this forever. At the moment of the 111 portal, your nervous system recognizes something essential. It realizes that a connection without presence is not truly a connection at all. It is only anticipation, and anticipation requires effort. Presence requires none. This is why you stop leaning forward. You are no longer asking for reassurance. You are no longer explaining your needs over and over. You are no longer translating his absences into hopeful signs. Not because you are trying to test him, but because your system has naturally recalibrated. The emotional cost of staying open without reciprocity has become too high. Peace now requires alignment. Divine Feminine, when presence becomes non-negotiable, your heart does not close, it becomes selective. You are no longer available for emotional ambiguity. You are no longer engaging in dynamics that exist only because you are the one holding them together. The connection must now stand on its own. This shift often feels invisible on the outside, but it is absolute on the inside. There may be no big conversation, no announcement, no dramatic confrontation. Just a quiet withdrawal of your emotional labor. And once that labor stops, the truth of the connection reveals itself. The masculine may experience this as distance, but it is not distance. It is equality. The feminine is no longer bridging the gap alone. She is allowing reality to show itself without interference. Divine Feminine, this is why the 111 portal feels like a turning point. It places you firmly in the present moment and asks whether the connection can exist there. If it cannot, your system will release it without resistance. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped pretending. Making presence non-negotiable is not a condition you impose on love, it is a boundary you set against self-abandonment. It ensures that whatever remains in your life now is real, embodied, and mutual. For a long time, you bent your own boundaries in the name of love, again and again. You softened them for hope, and delayed them for the sake of patience. But now you can no longer abandon yourself to keep the connection alive. This boundary is not against him, it is for you. The feminine is no longer willing to meet the masculine halfway when meeting him halfway means leaving herself behind. You stop buffering his discomfort. You stop absorbing the imbalance. You stop overextending yourself just to maintain a semblance of harmony. This shift is not a wall, it is a line of integrity drawn in self-love and truth. It feels strangely calm rather than painful. There is no internal conflict here, no bargaining, no second-guessing, just a steady knowing that you simply cannot continue as before. And once this boundary is in place, the journey must reorganize around it. Either the connection rises to meet you in embodied truth, or it gently releases without resistance. From this point forward, hope is no longer what sustains your journey. Only presence is. And if presence does not arrive, the divine feminine does not wait. She rests. She lives. She moves forward in alignment with what is actually here. The 111 portal does not demand dramatic action, it demands honesty. And when honesty fills the space, presence is the only thing that can remain. Divine feminine, emotional waiting does not end because you finally decided to cut the cord. It ends because your entire being no longer recognizes waiting as love. For a long time, waiting felt meaningful. It felt patient, virtuous, devoted. You believed that staying emotionally available without being met was part of your path. But there comes a moment when the body understands what the mind has tried to ignore. The 111 portal often marks that moment. Waiting is sustained by uncertainty. By. Maybe. By. Soon. By. Someday when things change. But this portal collapses time. It brings everything into the now. And when now arrives and there is still no real presence, emotional waiting loses its foundation. This is when the feminine stops hovering in limbo. You may notice you are no longer checking the space between moments, no longer bracing for the phone to ring, no longer treating silence as part of some cosmic test. The emotional posture that once leaned forward simply relaxes. Not because you gave up, but because the effort no longer makes sense. Divine Feminine, emotional waiting required you to stay unfinished. It asked you to pause your own life in perpetual anticipation. It kept your heart slightly open, slightly tense, always ready. That state cannot be sustained indefinitely. And when the journey reaches maturity, the body chooses completion over anticipation. That is why the end of waiting feels calm. There is no urgency, no panic, no dramatic spike of pain, just a quiet recognition that you are done holding space for something that does not hold space for you. The 111 portal reinforces this recognition by centering you in truth and real connection. It shows you, without judgment, what is available and what is not. And once that contrast is fully seen, the feminine no longer waits. She allows life to continue moving through her. You might notice that your days begin to feel lighter and fuller, even if nothing external has changed. Your energy is no longer tied up in what might be, it is now devoted to what is. You no longer measure each moment by whether it includes him. You no longer leak energy into the void of his absence. Your life expands because it is no longer orbiting around an unanswered question. This is where true peace enters, not the peace of getting what you thought you wanted, but the peace of no longer needing to want. From the outside, this shift might look like detachment. But on the inside, it feels like finally coming home to yourself and grounding in truth. You are not disconnecting from love, you are disconnecting from the endless waiting and uncertainty. Divine Feminine, ending this waiting does not mean closing your heart. It means closing the loop that kept you suspended. You are no longer pausing your world for someone else's timing. You return to your own rhythm. You reclaim your energy. You come home to yourself. There is a gentle homecoming unfolding within you. The energy you once poured outward is returning to your own heart. You remember that your journey has always been, at its core, about you, your growth, your wholeness, your truth. A quiet empowerment blooms as you realize you are already whole. You belong fully to yourself again. This is also why the masculine may feel a shift without quite understanding it. The emotional field that once held space for him is no longer there. He may not know why, but he will feel the difference. The connection now exists only where he shows up in truth, or not at all. If his soul is ready and the connection is real, this space may invite him to step forward. If not, it will remain empty, and you will continue moving on your path. Either way, you are not waiting at the threshold of this portal, you are already walking through it, into a new chapter of your journey. You stand sovereign, aligned, and rooted in your own presence and quiet power as this gateway opens. Nothing illusory can pass through with you. The time for illusions has run out. Only what is real is allowed to remain. This is how the 111th portal changes everything, not by imposing anything new upon you, but by revealing what has always been energetically true. Illusion can no longer be sustained in this light. What is true will crystallize and what is false will fall away. Whatever remains in your world after this clearing is aligned with your highest good. Any new connections or opportunities that arrive will resonate with the truth you now embody. You step through this portal carrying only truth, only authenticity, only the love that is mirrored in real presence. And from here onward, Divine Feminine, your journey continues anew, guided solely by the reality of love, the reciprocity of spirit, and the power of your own true presence.